Sa ating episode ngayong araw, makakasama po natin ang Commission on Elections. Ating pag-uusapan ang tungkol sa naralapit na national and local elections, pati na rin kung paano ang paghahanda sa ating pagboto. Pero bago po iyan, inaanyayahan po muna namin kayong lahat na tumutok sa ating live stream sa PIA Western Mindanao. Cross-posted sa RMN DXPR Pagadian, 1TV Philippines, Zanorte News Flash, Infolink Pagadian at sa iilang mga Facebook pages ng ating mga national government line agencies who are also members of the Mindanao Communicators Network. Nakahook up din po tayo sa Radyo Pilipinas. Of course, we would also like to acknowledge our online viewers who are here with us monitoring our live stream. Kasama po natin mula sa different cities and municipalities and of course the provinces across the region. Of course, hindi din natin makakalimutan i-acknowledge ang ating mga information officers from our different communication networks. Ang ating mga provincial information officers sa different provinces natin, Zamboanga del Norte, Zamboanga Sibugay at Zamboanga del Sur. Ang ating mga city and municipal information officers, ang ating mga barangay information officers, and of course, our information volunteers from the different academies here. Hindi din po natin makakalimutan i-acknowledge ang ating mga kasama ngayon ng mga media partners na nandito sa atin kasama on-site sa ating venue dito po sa C3. Of course, to start with our program this morning, let us welcome and acknowledge our guest for today. Let us welcome Attorney Glory Grace Nodado, Administrative Legal Officer of COMELEC 9. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Attorney.
So good morning, Sir Eman, and of course to our viewers, both online and of course the media who are present here today. Good morning to each and everyone. First and foremost, of course, I would like to extend my thanks to the Philippine Information Agency for giving us an opportunity to extend our information drive in relation to our upcoming May 12, 2025 elections. So as I was invited here today to shed light on certain matters in relation to our elections, specifically on our voting procedure, some questions, if there be questions in relation to certain rules and reminders in campaigning, then we will also be so glad to entertain those. And of course, we would like to also extend our drive in terms of advocating our advocacy against kontrabigay, which is in line with vote buying, vote selling, and abuse of state resource. And so, Sir Eman, if I may proceed, I will proceed with my a little bit of information, particularly on the very important or salient information reminders for this upcoming elections. So I opt to begin my voting reminder to the positions that are to be voted upon this upcoming elections, considering that this is a midterm election by which we will only be electing selected senators. For our national positions, we are to elect 12 senators for the level, in the national level, and then we are also to elect one party list group. For our local positions, we are to elect one member of the House of Representatives by which we actually belong. So like for example, in a certain province wherein there could typically be 2 or 2 until 4 district representatives, then of course the electorate is only expected to vote at least one by which he belongs. And then for one provincial governor, one provincial vice governor, and of course our board members, by which we also call them as members of our Sangguniang Panlalawigan. Here, expectedly, here in Zamboanga del Sur, we are, just an example, we are to elect 5. And for our mayoral position, we are to elect one vice mayor also, and of course, the members of our Sangguniang Panlungsod or bayan, depending by which, if it is within a city or a municipality. So, again, just an overview of our election. We have what we call an election period by which there is a breakdown of specific dates that we need to really put an emphasis, because there are certain election offenses that are being prohibited to be done during this period. However, just to give a trivia on our election period. Here in the Philippines, we are considered as one of those countries by which we have one of the longest election periods. I think that's also a highlight to which the Philippines really opt to strategize in a certain way that we are providing a longer period for our election period. So for our election period that began on January 12 to June 11, 2025. Now for our campaign period, there is an emphasis on its period due to the fact that certain election offenses are only chargeable when it is committed within the election period of a certain position. So for the national positions, that is from February 11 to May 10. Local positions that occur from March 28 to May 10. And final testing and sealing of ACMs, of course, we highly encourage that the candidates, the political parties, citizens' arm, and media be present during this conduct. So this is the final testing and sealing of ACMs, and that is from May 2 to 7. So that's already next week. And for the voting of the overseas voters, that is from April 13 to May 12. For our local absentee voters, they are to vote beginning yesterday, April 28 to 30. So for those who opt to actually serve during this election period, then they are being made to vote in advance through our local absentee voting. And of course, our election day, which falls on May 12, 2025, which is also considered as a holiday, having to assert that all electorates should vote during the election day so that we can also garner a high voter turnout. And of course, last but not the least, a very important requirement, regardless if a candidate won or lost during the election, the deadline for the filing of the Statement of Contributions and Expenditures, or SOSE, is June 11, 2025. So just a bit of reminder, as I have made mention a while ago, that there are certain prohibited activities during the election period. To emphasize from the entire period of the elections, maybe hopefully the media has certain questions pertaining to the gun ban. We would like to emphasize that the gun ban period is the entire election period. It does not end only during the election day, and that is from January 12 to June 11. Within the election period also, there is a regulation on the transfer of civil service employees. The reason of this one is to avoid the use of public employment in terms of vote buying. So that's why the COMELEC actually regulates this. And of course, the suspension also of elective public officials, because we do not want that the manner of suspension be used against a political strat for another candidate. So that's why there is this certain prohibited activity. And we also have the prohibition against donations, and that is from the period of February 11, 2025 May until the election day. So the coverage for our prohibition against donations does not only extend to candidates alone, but also to their family members or even their strong supporters. So we can actually impute that against them. So for the 45-day period immediately preceding the election, that is from March 28 to May 11, there is also an added prohibited activity of appointment of new employees, creation of new positions, and of course, total ban on promotions by which we cannot provide any exceptions. This is also a move in mitigating much less the use of or abuse of public positions in terms of vote buying and abuse of state resource. And of course, very important is the ban against release of public funds for social services and housing projects, except when authorized by the Commission. So except when there was proper filing before the deadline, then the COMELEC will then assess if whether or not that be approved or disapproved. And of course, we also have what we call public works ban, wherein we have the prohibition against the construction and the release of funding for public works to be able to regulate the public funds during the election period. We also have added prohibited activity, of course, before the election day, or we call that the eve of the election day. That is that is supposed to be May 11, 2025. It's not May, March. That's campaigning of course, that's already prohibited. Giving anything of value, of course, is also prohibited. And of course, the liquor ban. So to emphasize, the liquor ban is both prohibited before the day of the elections and of course the day of the elections, with certain special exceptions for foreigners and those hotels that actually have garnered authority from the COMELEC that they can sell liquors to foreigners alone. So, and of course, during the election day, there is a specific ban on campaigning, which is May 12, 2025. So to proceed also with our procedure in terms of elections, we opt to highlight, considering that I made mention that there will be final testing and sealing of these ACMs, after which such ACMs will then be delivered to their polling precincts. So we opt to emphasize that the automated counting machine will not be opened before 4 a.m. And the opening of the machine will be witnessed by those that will be present, that are authorized to be present during the election day, such as our watchers, our electoral board. So just to clarify, our regular hours of voting is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So, but we have what we call early voting hours, wherein it is from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. and that specific period is only being allocated or allotted to our persons with special needs, such as our senior citizens, our persons with disabilities, and of course our heavily pregnant women, with an emphasis also that their assisters be allowed to also vote during those hours. However, if they have not met the early voting hours, then they will be given priority also to vote during the regular voting hours. But we are also expecting, of course, together with the media, that we can actually inform them to be early during the election day, to be able to also guarantee their safety and of course convenience. For our voting in the priority polling place, to which if they did not meet the early voting hours, we have what we call priority polling place, and that is from 5 a.m. also to 5 p.m. For our persons deprived of liberty, we have allotted a special polling place for them. Because regardless if you are still a PDL, you still have the right to vote for local elections. And their voting period is from, voting schedule is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So then again, who are allowed to vote? So to clarify, all registered voters whose names are in the election day computerized voters list or EDCVL, except when such names have been manually crossed out on the list that was signed by the election officer for other reasons, such as, for example, when they were included in the petition for exclusion, and their name was ordered excluded to be in the list of voters by a proper court, then of course they will be excluded from the EDCVL, or much less in a separate list that was signed by our election officer. Another reason also for a registered voter to be not present in the EDCVL or a list that was signed by our election officer is when such voter has applied for local absentee voting abroad, as I have mentioned a while ago. And of course, lastly, is local absentee voting, in locally. And of course, the voter has been certified as an overseas voter as reflected in the Registry of Overseas Voters or ROV received by our Office of the Election Officers after the registration period. So if the certain electorate would like to actually make sure that he is in the list, then a certain electorate can go to the Office of the Election Officer by which he was actually registered to verify, or even today, the COMELEC is very much willing to issue a voter certification so that it would be also easier for an electorate to be identified by the electoral board during the election day. So they can conduct that. One of the most important things that we opt to highlight in this talk or event is our voting procedure, because one of our measures in making sure that our election right now would be far more convenient compared to the previous one is our use of our new machine, which has from a new supplier. And the thing about our elections right now is we are using an automated counting machine, which is far more smaller and less bulky compared to the PCOS machine. So just for the electorates to be familiar with the voting procedure, especially those that are first-time voters, for the first step of our voting procedure, they are to approach the electoral board or the EB and to say their name, precinct number, and of course sequence number. For the next step, the electoral board will then check if their name is on the election day computerized voters list, and will also check if there is a mark of an indelible ink over their nail, just to make sure that there would be a total prohibition of double voting during the election day. So that's the second step. For the third step, if there is no mark of indelible ink, then the electoral board will verify the identity and will make them sign on the EDCVL. The EDCVL, by the way, has a picture on it so that the electoral board can actually identify the face and the identity of the voter during the election day. For the fourth step, the electoral board chairperson will then show the orderliness and cleanliness of the ballot and will insert it inside a ballot secrecy folder and then give it to the voter with a marking pen. Of course, with an emphasis that we cannot use another pen during the election day. Only the marking pen that was provided by the COMELEC to be able to avoid the chances of your ballot being spoiled. So that's also an emphasis during the election day. For the fifth step, they are to proceed to the voting area and vote by fully shading the circle before the name of the candidate that they opt to vote. Sixth step, after shading all the candidates that they have chosen, they are to enter their ballot inside the automated counting machine and wait for the receipt to come out and view the ballot image of their ballot on the screen. So maybe later on we can actually have we will showcase a sample view of the screen so that the viewers of here today will have a grasp of how it looks like. And for the seventh step, we have to check or review the receipt and drop it inside the receipt bin to return the folder and the marking pen to the electoral board, with an emphasis that if there be election paraphernalia that will be garnered by the electorate outside of the polling place, and they could actually be chargeable of theft. And of course, the last step is to have the right nail be marked with an indelible ink and to go out from the polling place once they are done voting. So this is quite trivial, but there is also an important highlight of the prohibition of the carrying of indelible ink and acetone during the election day. That's also prohibited, and it could actually be chargeable as an election offense. So hopefully, much less no person will try to infringe such law. So an important reminder in terms of the shading of the circles. Here we have a vision of what we call a correct form of voting. So here the person did not overvote. He only voted for one position, by which there is also one position that is to be elected. So it is also important that the electorate do not overvote. The consequence of such will be the invalidation of such vote for that particular position alone. However, there is also an importance of highlighting that undervoting is actually allowed. So much less an example of which is when there are 10 councilors to be elected in office and a person is really motivated to just vote 3 votes, then that is allowed by law, and it will actually reflect on your receipt that you undervoted, and that is okay. So other reminders to voters as well is to, number 1, take care of their ballots, especially the security marks that are present in the ballot, to be able to avoid of the ballot being spoiled. Another is the use of ballot secrecy folders so that no other person can actually view the instance of shading and voting of a certain electorate. Do not also take a photo of your ballot, voter's receipt, and ACM screen. Do not put any mark on your ballot except shading the circle. And do not bring the ballot, voter's receipt, marking pen, ballot secrecy folder outside the polling place. And most importantly is to do not sell your vote, because this is not only something that is inimical to our credibility of our outcome of our elections, but rather this is an illegal, and this is an election offense by which there could be a paramount penalty and a criminal sanction provided by law. So just a vision also of our ballot. This is the front face of our ballot, and there are certain security marks and QR codes. We opt to emphasize then again that we are to really take good care of our ballots, because there will be an instance wherein your ballot will be spoiled if the security marks or the QR code were tampered upon filling the ballot, and there could be a chance of your ballot being spoiled. And once it will not be accepted by the ACM machine, then we cannot then again reinsert it. So that will totally invalidate your vote. So we opt to make sure that the people are well informed that the orderliness and the cleanliness of ballot during the election day is far less sacred and important. And then for a visual image of our receipt, this is how it looks like. For the back face, of course, there is also a QR code and NPO seal and our QR code. Now for our on-screen ballot image, we have the picture on the farthest right. We also have a picture there of what we expect to see in our receipts during the election day. But we cannot carry such receipts in our homes. We are to put the receipts in a special receptacle bin allotted for the receipts. And next is our precinct finder. So before the election day, it is much less encouraged that the electorates view online their specific precinct and sequence number, so that they be informed ahead of time to also be able to mitigate the flock of people and the long queues during the election day. So hopefully, the electorates after this event will definitely try to find online through this website, precinctfinder.comelec.gov.ph, or they can scan the QR being provided and projected in the screen. So next is certain campaign reminders as well, considering that our campaign period will end only May 10, 2025. So in our campaign reminders, apart from the use of the allowable sizes for tarpaulins and all other paraphernalias, with an emphasis that the only allowed size for a certain tarpaulin is 2 feet by 3 feet. Other campaign reminders also involved is to use only propaganda that are environmentally sustainable. Second campaign reminder is to only spend based on what is allowed by law. So to clarify, what is only allowed by law is when you are a candidate with a political party, then you are only allowed to spend 3 pesos per voter, whereas if you are an independent candidate, then you are allowed to spend at least 5 pesos per voter. So and lastly, to post only legal campaign materials on authorized common poster areas and of course, private properties with the consent of the owner. So next, the remaining prohibited campaign period is from May 11th and 2025, and then the day of the election day, which is May 12, 2025. So prohibited public places for the putting up of election paraphernalias and the like. this is very important that the people be aware of this, considering that they can actually report it to their election offices or to even contact it in what we call the STF backlash. So they can actually complain when they see or witness illegal campaign material being posted. So for prohibited public places, the first one is of course publicly owned electronic announcement board. Second is government-owned motor vehicles. So maybe we can observe this around our community. Third prohibited public place is public transportation vehicles controlled by the government, particularly those that are with the red plate. Fourth one is waiting sheds, sidewalks, streets, and lampposts, etc. Fifth, schools, public shrines, barangay halls, government offices, health centers, public structures. However, to clarify, there are certain instances wherein a certain public area or like a vicinity nearing barangay hall might have a common poster area, provided that there was a consent of the election officer, then that's actually allowed. Because the purpose of putting up a common poster area is to make sure that there be a presence of much less a increased flock of people so that it be easily be visible to the public eye. And then the lastly is within the premises of public transport terminal, including our bus terminals and of course our wharfs and ports. So those are our prohibited public places. Now we go to vote buying, vote selling, and abuse of state resource, because the mandate of the COMELEC does not only limit to the administration of the procedures being conducted during the election day, but we opt to also conduct our investigation to make sure that our electorates will be able to vote within their will and will not be compelled or will not be, there will be no undue influences, which is our community is much less vulnerable to what we call vote buying, vote selling, and and abuse of state resource. But during the barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections, we have already established as a permanent committee our committee in Contra Bigay. It is a multi-nation approach by which the Commission on Elections have partnered with a lot of numerous government agencies, even non-bank and bank institutions, to be able to advocate against Contra Bigay. In English, that is, of course, vote buying, and of course, not only does it involve money, but it could also be in a form of resource and even employment. So I would like to emphasize that. So, but before we proceed to the hotlines, of course, on how we are going to complain pertaining to Contra Bigay, or how can we actually be far more observant in our committee, we just opt to just a bit of discussion on what are really considered as acts of vote buying, so that the people will also know if whether or not this is still in the scope of vote buying. So vote buying is then an act of giving, offering, or promising anyone of money, not only money, but any office or employment, franchise or grant, public or private, to make an expenditure directly or indirectly, or to cause an expenditure to be made to any person, association, etc. So we can see there that the definition of vote buying does not actually only limit to those things of value. It could be certain instances by which there could be an undue influence in the freedom of the person to rightfully choose and vote who to elect or who to vote during this election day. So next also, an emphasis could be made on the criminalization, of course, also of vote selling. It's not also all the time that it be on the side of a candidate or the political party. There is also an emphasis on the criminalization of what we call vote selling, wherein it is an act or asking or receiving directly or indirectly of money or anything of value, any office or employment, franchise or grant, public or private, or make or offer to make an expenditure directly and indirectly to any of the above mentioned reasons. So basically, when there is also an offer on the part of the electorate to sell their vote, then they could also be chargeable with an election offense. So both the party of the candidate and the voter can actually be charged against this COMELEC resolution. And emphasis that vote buying and selling is not only morally wrong, it is also illegal under the law by which we provide a penalty, and that is imprisonment of not less than 1 year but also not more than 6 years, and not subject to probation. And of course, I think the heaviest penalty of vote buying, vote selling, and abuse of state resource or any other election offense, that is the disqualification to hold public office and deprivation of the right to suffrage. So you cannot be voted upon, or you will be deprived of your right to vote if ever you will be convicted of vote buying or vote selling. And then for political parties, there is also a fine being provided, which is not less than 10,000 pesos. So just to be clear also that it is not necessary that there be only actual vote buying and vote selling incident to be able to charge someone of a vote buying and vote selling. We also have what we call presumed acts of vote buying or vote selling. In cases wherein the COMELEC shall have a personal knowledge of these instances, then we can definitely conduct an investigation because these are presumed acts of vote buying. Number one of that is possessing or delivery of monies, cards, pay envelopes, bags, groceries, token, and the like, things of value, together with a sample ballot or campaign material. So that is considered as a presumed act of vote buying, and we can conduct an further investigation on such event. Second is offering or promising something of value in consideration for someone's vote, whether it be verbal or it be through based on actions. That's also presumed act. Third is, of course, the long lines and queues during the election day. It's inimical that we highlight this, considering that I think you would agree with me that it's far abnormal to see long lines and queues outside of the polling centers and on a day nearing the election day. So that is also considered as a presumed act. Next is, of course, while a house-to-house campaign is not prohibited under the law, when it involves giving anything of value, then that is a presumed act. Holding bingo games, talent shows, and other similar activities involving prizes. I think there are certain candidates in the national positions that were also issued show cause orders because of this presumed act. And next is employing the HACOT system before or on the election day for the purpose of distributing anything of value, because that's also considered as a presumed act. Next is possessing and transporting 500,000 pesos, at least 500,000 pesos, along with the campaign paraphernalia during the period of 2 days before and on election day, except those authorized persons such as cashiers, disbursement officers, provided that they have a certificate of employment and a working ID during the election day or the day preceding the election. Causing the splitting of the amount of at least 20,000 pesos to smaller denominations during a period of 5 days before the election day, except when necessary for business. So that's also one. Conducting medical missions, legal aid services, feeding programs, considering that there is still a use of resource, then it could also fall as vote buying, which the names of the candidates are mentioned or their names or pictures are visible. So even if they are actually not present during their event, when we can thoroughly establish that it is being done with their in line with their candidacy, then that could also be a presumed act of vote buying. And of course, giving of what we call ayuda, social assistance, while it is not entirely prohibited under the law during the election period, there is a total prohibition on ayuda except for burial and medical assistance at least 10 days before the election day. So that will begin in May 2, 2025. And giving ayuda other than medical and burial assistance, as I have made mention, hiring or appointing more than 2 watchers in every precinct, because we are only allowed to hire 2 watchers, and they are only allowed to serve alternately. So they are not allowed to serve simultaneously. And of course, possessing on the day indelible ink or any chemical that may remove indelible ink, except those authorized by the Commission in line of work. So possessing also of blank ballots during election day, except those authorized by the Commission, and such other analogous circumstances. So the abuse of state resource is a new, while it is a prevalent problem during the previous elections, we opt to emphasize that there is a specific prohibition and drive against abuse of state resource, because what we are trying to avoid is the use of public funds being abused by the incumbent in terms of running or vying for office. So abuse of state resource pertains to the misuse of government resources, whether material, human, coercive, regulatory, budgetary, media-related, or legislative, for electoral advantage. So with specific mentions on the acts constituting abuse of state resource, the first one is intervention of public officers and employees. However, if there be questions on the legalities of if whether or not COS or JOs are allowed to involve themselves in political partisan activity, maybe later I can also highlight that. And of course, our barangay captains also and sangguniang kabataan officials, they are actually allowed to engage in political partisan activity. We have already issued a memorandum emphasizing that. However, that is without prejudice to the involvement of the Department of Interior and local government in terms of the supervision, because they are only encouraged to conduct or involve themselves in political partisan activities outside the office hours for political officers. Next is undue influence, of course. Third is the use of public funds, money deposited in trust, equipment, facilities owned or controlled by the government for an electronic campaign, release, disbursement, or expenditure of public funds except those that are allowed by law. So that's already what we call an ASR. And then the next one is construction of public works also, considering that I have made mention that there is a what we call public works ban. So if there is a construction or delivery of materials 45 days preceding the regular elections, then that is considered as an ASR. So what happens when during the election day is that we conduct is what we call a surveillance and validation, because the COMELEC is not only charged of the administration of election laws, but we are to also deputize our partner agencies in terms of security. We have the AFP, the PNP, NBI, and other law enforcement agencies. And on the election day, they shall conduct, or even prior to that, surveillance of a person or place and validation of any received information, report, or complaints of vote buying and vote selling or acts constituting abuse of state resource. So on the election day, considering that there is an imminent rise of election offenses that may be committed, we are allowed to to actually hold a warrantless arrest. So when a person or a law enforcement officer may actually without a warrant arrest a person when in his or her presence, the person to be arrested is actually committing or is attempting to commit the election offense of vote buying, vote selling, and acts constituting abuse of state resource. So for the filing of complaints for vote buying, vote selling, and abuse of state resource, they can either file that or any other election offense. They can actually file that through the commission or through the prosecutor's office, with an emphasis that if it be filed in the level of the COMELEC, then of course your election officers, by which there is a allegation on the presence of an election offense, then the election officer can actually receive such complaint. However, an emphasis be made that such complaints can be filed both through the COMELEC or the prosecutor's office, and the agency that has initially taken cognizance of such complaint shall exercise jurisdiction in the exclusion of others. Lastly, before I end my brief session on the important reminders, I would like to leave our COMELEC hotline for STF Baklas. That is, we have an email for that. They can actually file their complaint through the email of the Baklas, having to narrate the facts of certain complaint. They can email it to 2025 nle.stf -baklas at comelec.gov.ph. And of course, we have hotlines for our kontrabigay. They can contact it to 8567-4574, or they can reach it through 8567-4576. So once again, thank you. And later on, I will be so much honored to accept questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions for the clarity of the media and of course our viewers online. Thank you, Sir Eman.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Glory. No? Napakaganda ng mga updates. Maraming salamat dun sa updates and reminders natin, no, para sa upcoming national and local elections. Hopefully, yung mga viewers natin online and yung mga nandito na kasama natin, mga media partners, you were able to take some notes, no? Kasi mataas-taas at marami yung reminders ni Attorney. Now, Attorney, we will proceed with the questions that we have gathered online. Marami din po ito. Nasa 10 po yung na-gather natin and they are still coming in. Marami pang mga parating. So sisimulan natin sa tanong mula sa Zamsulta, Zamboanga City, Suluan, Tawi-Tawi. They have 2 questions. For the first question po, how is COMELEC ensures the safe and secure conduct of elections in areas historically affected by security concerns, particularly in Sulu and Tawi-Tawi?
Okay, so for COMELEC 9, Sir Eman, I would just like to emphasize that it was only recently that last year, it was pronounced in a Supreme Court decision that the Sulu be part of the COMELEC 9. However, Tawi-Tawi is not in the scope of the COMELEC Region 9. It's only here, in the question, it's only Sulu that we actually have personal knowledge on the security and safety measures that are being conducted. So of course, we cannot deny the fact that historically speaking, such area might have a lot of challenges. One of the measures that we have employed so far is, of course, securing the safety of our election officers. So if there be allegations pertaining to questions on impartiality, of course, then the COMELEC will also be very welcome with those complaints being filed not only by the candidates, of course, but our voters as well. Another effort, of course, of the Commission on Elections in having to secure the area of Sulu is the coordination with our law enforcement agencies. We have conducted, so far we have conducted four what we call that regional joint conference for security. We are inviting not only the AFP, PNP, but also the Philippine Coast Guard, considering that the vicinity of the Sulu area is also archipelagic in itself. So we have, and of course, during this, what we call RJSCCs, we have determined the areas by which we need to deploy security. So hopefully this upcoming elections, while there is a wider scope of jurisdiction for the COMELEC Region 9, then we will, of course, be able to secure that there will be no instances of failures of election, much less here in Sulu, considering that for a long period of time, it will now be a part of the Region 9.
Thank you, Attorney. No, it's good to note na security forces will be in place, no, especially during the election. So ito naman yung pangalawang katanungan ng Zamsulta po. There have been criticisms about the reliability of vote counting machines or VCMs natin in previous elections. So how can COMELEC guarantee that technical failures will not compromise the integrity of our upcoming election?
So While there are also, of course, this is not new to us, that there are questions in relation to the viability of the procedure elections, far less if there will be technicalities. So I just like to emphasize that as an effort to strengthen our logistics, we have then again we have changed our machine into a far more less convenient means of transport because it's smaller and it will be easier to transport. We also have provided, that is, of course, we have contracted with an independent logistics provider for that. We have F2 Logistics who will which will deliver our ACMs to our and other election paraphernalias to our field offices. Another also is, of course, the provision of the internet, because we cannot deny the fact that there are still areas that has no internet connection. So we have contracted with I1 to install Starlink devices to these areas, which we have already determined if such Starlink devices will work prior the election day. So that's one of our efforts. As for the questions in relation to transmission, just to highlight that during the because I think this was emphasized by our chairman, but just to clarify, to give the people a sense of peace in terms of the voting process, like to emphasize that the ACMs will not ever be connected to the internet or to any ethereal modem while the voting procedure is occurring. So it will only be upon transmission, and even in the sealing, the ECMs will not be connected to any internet or any ethereal model, so that there will be no questions as to the transmission and the infringing upon of the system or the transmission process. With due consideration also that if the votes are now being transmitted, then it will be transmitted simultaneously to seven servers. Okay. Then particularly NAMFREL, even for minority party, majority party, and even Citizens Arm. So we'll provide 7 servers for that, and such data will be transmitted simultaneously to ensure that all of the numbers are precise. Okay. So hopefully the people will have a sense of peace that the COMELEC does not allow any other ways by which we can screen or we can even view it, for as long as it's not only for transmission purpose.
Okay, magandang ano po yun, attorney. Ito naman, attorney, from Sibugay, Zamboanga, Sibugay Province po. How has the voter turnout been in Region 9 in the past elections? And what are the steps that we have taken up to encourage higher participation this coming elections?
So for this question, Sir Eman, I want to be candid that there was, of course, a visible decrease in voter turnout during the pandemic period. So for Region 9, of course, expecting that the election period has not only mitigated our right to vote because of health matters, but also there was no registration of voters during the election during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then there was a rapid increase of registrants during the preceding barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. However, we cannot preempt the outcome of these elections as to the voter turnout, but we are expecting a rapid increase also of voter turnout, considering that for our cities alone, there is a rapid increase of at least 10% of registered voters for an area. I think the consideration, the factors that are to be considered of the increase of voters registration is, of course, the lack of registration during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also there is a visible number of what we call balikbayan voters, wherein they were before voters through overseas voting, but now some of them actually opted to come back here in the Philippines and to vote again through our normal local way of voting. Then definitely we are expecting that there be higher voter turnout for these elections. But to just add more on measures on how we are trying to increase the number of our voter turnout, apart from such observable measures in terms of registration, we've also been conducting what we call ACM roadshows to barangays, not only barangays, but even to schools, on how we are going to use our machines so that the people be more involved and more knowledgeable on how to vote during the election day so that they actually be not intimidated with our automated voting system. And of course, another effort that is being done by the COMELEC also is to strengthening our social media drive much with the consideration that since there is a rapid increase of our technological advancement, that the COMELEC does not only want to shift from day-to-day typical traditional information drive, but rather we opt to go live and localizing, nationalizing what is supposed to be local. So hopefully through that, we can actually heighten or increase our voting turnout during this upcoming May 12 elections.
Oo. Thank you, Attorney. Merong follow-up, Attorney.
Okay.
Is COMELEC open to having more citizen election watchers? I think you made mention kanina during your discussion, no, na allowed lang 2 watchers.
Yeah.
But dito naman, is your office open to having more citizen election watchers, and how can interested groups or individual participate? Siguro not necessarily yung nandun talaga sa loob.
So, considering that the elections is not only supposed to be credible, it's supposed to be transparent, then of course the COMELEC is much willing to open to having more citizen election watchers. However, we are burdened to actually balance transparency between the orderliness of the elections. So it was only recently that there was it was a memo emphasizing that we are actually prohibiting the use of membership cards, because previously, Sir Emma, we have what we call these membership cards that are being carried by certain supporters during the election day, and such membership card might be prone to abuse. So that's why the COMELEC did totally prohibit this. But as a measure to make sure that the citizens are, it would be transparent for the citizens even prior to the elections, as for even the convening of the board of canvassers, the delivery of the ACMs in the municipality, then the election officer of a certain municipality is actually mandated, or it is duty bound to issue a notice to the candidates, political parties, media, and citizens arm to witness such procedures so that the people will have peace. And of course, owing to the public eye, the transparency during the election period, then we can have this. Also, another form of increasing the visibility of our coordination process for the election is the registration of our local media, because we thoroughly acknowledge the duty and influence of the media in terms of heightening our transparency and gaining the confidence of the people during this election day.
Okay, no? So for the information of everybody pala, this information that we are talking about here is also available sa COMELEC website, pati sa COMELEC na mga Facebook pages. So if you are very interested and for yourself to be reminded all the time, bago ang election, tingnan po natin yung mga social media pages ng ating COMELEC, ng ating local COMELEC. PIA will also be doing some postings regarding the information that we have been sharing here. Let's proceed naman, Attorney, sa Zamboanga del Norte. Meron silang 4 na katanungan dito. So tingnan muna natin yung unang katanungan nila. How is COMELEC making sure that overseas voting for OFWs is easy, secure, and safeguarded against any form of fraud?
Okay. So I think, Sir Eman, we've actually conducted, just a friendly discussion on this. I think this is quite relevant, and of course, this is because public criticism is not something that the COMELEC is actually much less threatened. It's a form of having to improve the system. So typically, when there are complaints in relation to like the voting or what actually reflects in the ballot, then we are very much less open to having to cater these doubts. So for overseas voters, I think there was also an posting circulating in media, through social media rather, is that we opt to highlight that sometimes also it's not prim and proper to believe what we see all the time in social media. Just to give you an insight on how the voting is conducted, it is conducted online, and we have also provided procedures by which we could transmit it safely And if there be questions on the transmission of this, then the COMELEC will be very much welcome to actually troubleshoot it to make sure that the votes of our overseas voters are not being played upon by the commission. However, for the past few days, we have tried to also ask if there be verified complaints in relation to this, and insofar as the COMELEC is concerned, there have been none. So just to clarify, for those postings that are being posted online, while it is of course good, no, that the people are actually prudent on where their votes are coming from, it is also rather a responsibility, of course, of the people to be informed of the things that have probable cause rather than just believing what they see. So hopefully we can.
Yes, no, maganda yung reminder kasi nga ang dami-daming kumakalat ng mga information that we have to verify, especially if totoo or hindi bago po natin paniwalaan at i-share especially. So ito naman, attorney, regarding our persons with special needs. Ano-ano po yung mga assistance na aasahan ng ating, mauuna kasi silang buboto basta nasabi po ninyo kanina. Meron ba silang special mga assistance na matatanggap when they vote?
For our persons with special needs, no, in our ACM, there is our first measure, of course, is providing them assistors. So to emphasize, actually, you cannot even be just an assistor when a certain person of disability is there. For every person of disability, their assistor is also registered prior to the elections. So that's actually one of our measures to ensure that these persons of disabilities are really with the assistors of their choice, not only being assisted by anyone, but rather a person of choice. Because if you are a person with disability, then, or a person of special needs, then there is a chance that you will be vulnerable to undue influence during the election period, because it's actually not allowed that there be a certain person that will be next to you when you are filling your vote. However, one of our measures in making sure that the person with special needs can verify if he really shaded his ballot in accordance to his will is there is an attached headphones to the ACM. So before the person will actually click on the affirming the oneness of the screen ballot image of his ballot, then he can actually hear as to if whether or not he actually shaded the right person for that. So we have provided within our machine are certain accessories that will be available for every polling precinct in case there be a person of special need that will be needing such accessory.
Ito naman, follow-up lang siguro, attorney, from myself. No?
Okay.
What if hindi nakapag-vote yung persons with special needs on the allotted time?
Yeah.
So will they still be
Yes, provided that it is not beyond 7 p.m. because by 7 p.m. we are duty bound to really close the elections. So, however, if they were not able to vote during the early voting hour, then they can actually vote during the regular voting hour, and then they still be prioritized during those period.
Okay. So ito naman, let's go back to mga information related na mga post, yung mga fake news na kumakalat, no, mga information disorders. So how is COMELEC working with social media platforms to prevent the spread of this proliferation of mga information disorders?
So thank you for that, Sir Eman, because I opt to also highlight this. Just recently, I think 2 days ago, through COMELEC Resolution number 11064, we have established our Task Force KKK sa halalan. So that is a special task force tasked to ensure that through the use of social media platforms, we can mitigate the presence of disinformation. Not only disinformation, but also the presence of deepfakes, keepfakes, or even those unauthorized use of AI technology. So we have recently launched our incidental report portal, which is accessible in our COMELEC website. Then through the COMELEC, in its effort to tap agencies, because we duly recognize that Facebook is really the platform that is usually used in, spreading information, especially during election period. And we have, COMELEC has also partnered with Meta to ensure that we can remove such materials online, regardless if it be done unilaterally by the COMELEC. So we can definitely do that in line also with the community standards of these platforms to ensure that the people be shielded from the proliferation of this information during the election day or even during the entire period of the elections.
Follow up na lang ito, attorney,
Okay.
kasi nakita din natin no, yung mga iba't ibang mga disinformation na nangyayari. So nakita natin itong isang video siguro as a sort of fact-checking na lang din na if ever daw parang questioning the integrity no, of our aside from the VCMs that we are using but the COMELEC as well, na there is a possibility daw that when we vote tapos iba daw yung lalabas dun sa dun sa receipt natin. So is there some truth to that information?
No, because first and foremost, it's not. I would just like to debunk, no. It's traditional for us to really say that there could be an instance of the COMELEC being your vote varying from what is being projected on the screen. I opt to debunk such because prior to our preparations, we do not only make sure that the machines turn on and off, we also make sure that we have tested their credibility in terms of reading our votes. So in our conduct of our ACM roadshows, considering that there is what you call a sampling of these ACMs, then the voters will be given a chance to actually vote during this period, our testing, and that is actually open to the public eye. We have what we call sample voting. We conduct that to be able to ensure that what we actually vote or shade upon our ballot is what is being actually projected on the screen. So I would like to also use this now as an advent that if the people, of course, be more prudent in believing such, because, rumors are easier made than established. So hopefully the people will be also prudent in believing and sharing these kinds of information.
Sabi pa doon,
Yeah.
kahuli-hulihan is i-screenshot daw nila para to
Yeah.
be sure
Yeah.
na yung binoto nila lalabas doon sa receipt nila. Are we allowed to take screenshots?
No, we are not allowed to take screenshots because regardless of reason, this might become a proof in exchange of a vote, because that we cannot be blind of such instance wherein the receipts and the ballots are being used as receipts to claim certain benefits after the voting. So that's why we are prohibiting the presence of photos. Even CCTVs are not even allowed within the polling place to ensure that a person is not intimidated to rightfully vote based on his conscience during the election day.
Okay, klaro po iyon. Bawal mag-screenshot right after you vote and receive your receipt, no? So ito naman, let's proceed with vote buying or yung ginagawa natin ngayon na campaign ngayon, kontra bigay. Okay, so ito from pa rin to, Zamboanga del Norte, what are the measures in place to monitor and report a vote buying? Binigay nyo na kanina yung numero, attorney, how we can contact, pero ilan po yung nagmaman nitong contact number natin na if ever maramihan yung magre-report from the different areas here in our province, in our region, no, per se. So, paano po yun?
We have provided our COMELEC hotlines. However, in our hotlines, it is still within the election office by which such jurisdiction. Kasi iba yung reporting, iba rin yung action. So that's why we are still going to partner with our election offices when it comes to catering such complaints for kontrabigay. For kontrabigay also, an emphasis be made that this is a multi-sectoral approach. We do not only involve our Commission on Elections, we've also partnered with our other law enforcement agencies or even the Public Prosecutor's Office and the Public Prosecutor's Office to be able to really make sure now we can prosecute this, because as I have mentioned a while ago, we can file it either through the COMELEC or the Prosecutor's Office. So we have also tapped other agencies that provide legal service, such as the Public Attorney's Office, and of course, we have involved the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. They are expected to put up a help desk in fronting our in any other area. So they will be establishing a help desk to make sure that we can provide free legal assistance to those who not only opt to contact the hotline but to really file a written verified complaint against these people that are that will be guilty or be allegedly guilty of the bigayan or vote buying or selling during the election day.
Mhm. Ito kasi yung pinaka-concern nila, attorney.
Yeah.
Once pag nag-report sila, will there be a protection for those who would report a case of ganito, vote buying? Kasi parang natatakot
Yeah.
na ipakita or paalam na, oy kami to. Parang,
So to give you lang, no, this is not actually trivial. That this happens to a lot of cases, but one of the measures by which we can protect these people is even if themselves are actually guilty of engaging in vote selling during the election day, then they can actually be exempt from prosecution, provided that they stand as witness. However, of course, we cannot shield them from perjury, no? Because if they also lie under oath or before in open court, then they could also be charged with perjury. But if a person, regardless if he or she is guilty of vote selling, then he will be exempted from prosecution. So I think that's also a very good benefit if a person is being alleged of involving in vote selling, because they can actually be excluded from prosecution if they willingly stand as witnesses against allegations of vote buying or selling.
last, regarding vote
Okay,
buying, wala naman tayong instance na na-report dito sa Region 9.
For Region 9, we are I think it's visible naman, no, that insofar as the media is concerned, we have not yet issued any show cause order to any people in relation to kontrabigay. However, this is not something to be celebrated upon, but rather we are still expecting the people to be prudent in terms of reporting instances of instances of vote buying or selling. But insofar as the COMELEC regional office is concerned, we have not yet issued any cases or any show cause orders in relation to vote buying and selling within the Region 9. So I think that's also commendable in part of the candidates here in 9, that they have really been prudent in not committing any acts constituting vote buying during the campaign period. So hopefully, we will be able to extinguish such practice not only during the campaign period but also during the election day.
Okay.
So thank you, Sir.
Okay, thank you po. Ito naman, proceed tayo sa question from the netizens. Merong isang question dito. I think this is a personal question. No? A voter said, once pa lang siya nakamiss ng election at hindi nakaboto pero hindi na niya makita sa pressing finder ang kaniyang pangalan. Makakaboto pa ba siya? Or bakit wala na sa pressing finder ang kaniyang data? Saan niya ito pwedeng i-check ang kaniyang presinto bago ang darating na halalan?
Okay, so, of course, no, Sir Eman, I'm a lawyer, so technically, when giving personal advices, we are still very careful, because when personal legal advice is concerned, it's usually in the case-to-case basis. However, such instance or question is not new to us. However, for technicalities, what I know and can guarantee is when you have not voted for 2 consecutive elections, that is the only instance by which you will be removed in the system. So here, the netizen has made mention that he was not only able to vote at least once. However, considering that I have also no personal knowledge on his identity, maybe there was an instance wherein he was included in a petition for exclusion and he was actually not informed, or maybe there was a change and he was not actually thoroughly informed of his name being excluded on the list. So to be able to verify such, I would advise the person to really visit the election office by which he or she is a registered voter, and to verify in the system whether or not there be a just a technical difficulty, or there be any case or complaint filed against the person and that the person be excluded in the list. So this is also question that is always asked to the COMELEC, whether or not the COMELEC still issues COMELEC ID. We do not. We only provide voter certification for the purpose of making sure that the system is always being updated. That's why we are presence of a person on the list. We are encouraging them to actually go to their their specific election office and then to garner their voter certification for the also convenience of the electoral board during the election day.
So siguro dagdag doon, no? Kaya maigi talaga na before election, check nyo na ang pressing finder kung nandun po yung pangalan nyo.
Yes.
Kasi kung wala doon yung pangalan nyo, mahirap na kung during the election, election time, tsaka pa hahanapin.
Yes.
Oo, so yeah. I think the second question also relates to that, attorney. Punta tayo sa third question nila. There are some rumors on vote buying. How does COMELEC plan to deter vote buying and protect voters from such practice? Parang na-mention nyo na ito. Etong sa susunod. Matutuloy po ba ang barangay and SK elections this coming December?
Our answer is definitely yes. COMELEC has already issued our resolution establishing our schedule for our election day, elections. So our election day is December 1. So I think that's already clear, no? We need to make sure that the people are well informed na tuloy ang ating barangay and sangguniang kabataang elections, considering that there was also already a case decided by the court by which we cannot anymore stall our conduct of our barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections. So definitely it will be a very busy period for the Philippines.
Okay. So ito naman, question on security. Anong mga areas ang hotspot areas dito sa Zamboanga Peninsula?
While of course, we do not want to preempt, no?
Yes,
we have made mention, I have made mention kanina, Sir Eman, that we do not, of course, want to preempt our categorization or classification of our areas, because it might actually cause rather panic to our people. However, for areas of concerns, definitely we have identified these areas based on their colors. Say for example, our red, that is there is still rising emergence in there, and then we go to orange, and then we go to yellow, then we go to green, because however, to give the people a sake of peace, we have already identified our areas of concerns to also make sure that the number of law enforcement agencies that we have employed during these areas are actually proportionate to their classification in terms of safety and security concern.
So walang dapat ipag-alala po regarding doon, kasi merong ide-deploy na mga personnel, security personnel doon sa mga areas that are flagged. Okay, so I think that's the last question for our online viewers. Maraming salamat po sa inyong mga katanungan. Now we will proceed naman sa mga katanungan mula sa ating mga on-site media partners na kasama natin dito. For the first question, magmumula po sa RMN DXPR Pagadian kay Sir Stanley Dueñas. Sige lang po, ipatutuloy niyo lang po ang question niyo po.
Out of 100%, ma'am, ilang porsyento na po ang preparation ng COMELEC sa nanalapit na po ng midterm election dito sa Region 9?
Okay. So just to give you specific actually dates on our delivery, so that you could also be aware of our progress. Definitely we are on time. No schedule insofar as the COMELEC 9 is concerned. We are on time, and there have been no delays in terms of our delivery. But I would like to emphasize that our ACMs will only be delivered beginning May 1. So to our municipal offices. So it will only be beginning May 1 that because our ACMs actually are in Dipolog City. That's already public knowledge that that's the warehouse by which we are storing these ACMs. For our election kits as well, we are to deliver it before April 30. So hopefully we need to actually reach 100% for our paraphernalias for April 30. So right now in our region, though it's still not 100%, definitely it's still ongoing even at this moment, but much less we need to reach 100% before April 30 so that we can proceed with the delivery of the machines for May 1.
Another question po, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Gusto po lang malaman kung ano talaga ang katotohanan. Malalaman ba ng mga watchers ang ibinoto ng isang voter samantalang siya po ay patuloy pa sa kanyang pag-vote sa loob ng isang voting percent? May nagsasabi kasi, ma'am, na kapag iba daw rong ay yung ibinoto ng ang isang voter, walang backing. So yan ang yun ang political strategy ng ibang political leaders para naman matakot mag-straight vote ang isang voter. Totoo ba yun na may ibang tao na makakaalam sa ibinoto ng isang voter?
So that's a good question. I think we cannot actually, be ignorant of what is really happening in our vicinities. However, just to clarify, for our watchers, as I have made mention a while ago, that we're only allowed to, provided that they are actually allowed to only serve alternately. So meaning to say, sir, hindi sila pwede sabay. Dapat alternate lang. Also, if you have been exposed to our ACMs, we have upgraded our system of covering the ballot screen so that even the watchers will be given access to an area nearing the polling precinct, then definitely they will not be able to view. And I think it's far more quite impossible for a certain person to really identify. So hopefully we can give confidence to our electorates that if there be anomalies after, like for example, the backing that you have made mention a while ago, then it is rather impossible for a certain political party to actually identify if the person actually voted or voted against a person during the election day. To at least, give them a sense of peace that where there be a withholding of any benefits, not even just related to the election period, then definitely no other person can gain access to the vote of a person, much less identify it during kasi wala naman pong pangalan yung balota, and it would be rather impossible for the person to actually, for any other person working during the election day to determine na yan ang boto mo. So hopefully the people will not be fearful of really voting based on their conscience and their conduct during their personal choice during the period. So definitely, sir, that's a no, and we have, rest assured, we have employed our measures to be able to give the people a sense of peace na kung sino ang binoboto nila during election, then sila lang talaga ang makakaalam kung sino ang binote nila.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Stanley. Susunod na katanungan ay magmumula sa IFM Pagadian with Sir Tantan Lumayno.
Good morning po, Attorney. May nagsasabi po na pwedeng mahak ang SM natin na gagamitin for this coming election dahil connected po daw ito sa internet. Ito po ba ay totoo or fake news lang po?
It's definitely fake news. I think I've put an emphasis that even during the sealing of the ECMs, we are not allowed to connect it to the internet and to even transmit it or to even any ethereal model. What we have also conducted a drive, and rest assured our people are properly trained that they are prohibited to connect it to the internet or any ethereal model so that the people will have a sense of peace that nothing is happening to the ACM prior the transmission of the votes.
Thank you po, Attorney. My second question is, dito po sa Zamboanga del Sur, wala pa bang natanggap ang COMELEC na may vote buying po na nangyari?
For vote buying, None insofar, but we have already received complaints against abuse of state resource, as I have made mention a while ago, such as, for example, the use of vehicles in terms of transporting election paraphernalias. But insofar as vote buying and selling is concerned, we have not yet received any here in Region 9.
Okay, thank you po.
Thank
Good morning.
you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Tantan. Next question will come from Sir Elmer Maghanoy of Media Link Pagadian.
Good morning po. Kasi kanina na yung topic ninyo ay sinasabi ninyo may concern sa CCTV.
Yeah.
So ngayon, talk of the town sa Pagadian City, ang CCTV. Mayroong mga CCTV na inalagay nila doon sa malapit sa school para daw yung mga tao na buboto makita doon. So, ano bang pwede natin gawin na ito mayroon namang TRO na hindi pwede alisin? Kung maglagay ang isang party ng CCTV, pwede ba ang another party maglagay din sila ng kanila?
Sir, just to shed light on the facts of the issue, considering that I'm also a resident of Pagadian, I cannot bear ignorance of these issues, but we opt to highlight that we opt to respect the presence of an impending case in the court. Mm-hmm. That is what you call a sub judice rule, and the COMELEC cannot, because our job is not only to be impartial, but to also look impartial in front of the people. But definitely, just to give clarity on the prohibition of the CCTVs, our prohibition is based on law is the putting up of CCTVs in polling precincts. Mm-hmm. So, as to the factual incidences of the issues, that is a case that will be be better conducted by the court and not of the COMELEC, because our job is only limited to interpreting our electoral laws. So for having to screen the factual issues of the case, I think that's a thing that is far less better to be left to the discretion of the court.
Okay, pero anong bawal? Yung pwede ba lalagyan ng CCTV ang entrance ng school?
We cannot say, sir, that
ano?
it is legal, but we cannot also say that it is illegal, because it is a purview in the law that if there is no law prohibiting it, then definitely we cannot also shed it as legal. However, to give also emphasis that such issue is already being raised in the COMELEC main as well, and it is only through the law department that the COMELEC can actually give its legal interpretation on the matter. So most
hanggang
definitely,
kailan ka malaman natin na pwede ba or hindi pwede lagyan ng...
when there is already a decision of the court, sir.
So 20 days tapos ng election. So ngayon, kung ang isang party ay mayroong CCTV doon, so pwede din ang isang party maglagay doon o mayroon pang ibang lalagay doon ng CCTV?
Insofar as the facts are concerned, sir, the COMELEC cannot actually establish them for anyone. But what we know is that we have knowledge of the issuance of a TRO, allowing the putting up again of the certain CCTVs of the areas by which they are removed. So most definitely, if that is the only mandate of the court, then the other party is definitely duty bound to respect that. But in terms of the other party, then we cannot say yes or no to its machinery. What we can only guarantee is that regardless if there be presence of the CCTVs, then within the polling precincts, COMELEC is doing its best to make sure that the voters are not influenced during their shading of their ballots.
So doon sa polling places, wala.
Wala po, sir. That
Pero
is
outside
totally
sa school,
prohibited under the law. Because it's hard to say, sir, that it is allowed, because the COMELEC cannot assert facts by which we do not have personal knowledge. So that's why the COMELEC is very careful with having to say affirm or disregard, because then again, we do not have personal knowledge of these issues. So because it might give a wrong notion on the public eye that we we are actually fighting for one political party against another. So it will be safer if the COMELEC will leave such factual matters left to the court and will focus on administering our elections impartially, so that it would be the people will believe in the credibility of the outcome of the elections.
So, second question, ma'am. Yung CCTV, pwede bang malaman nila kung sino ang iboboto nila?
For the CCTV, sir, I'm not so quite sure of the placement, of course, and the quality of the cameras of the CCTVs. So, but in my personal knowledge on how a CCTV works, it's far less impossible unless there be a system of automatically identifying, by which you require a certain high technology class of CCTV talaga to ensure that there be a system by which the CCTV will be able to read kung sino talaga yung visual image. Kasi, di ba, if you're going to CCTV, it can only record naman yung face, but it cannot properly identify. And considering that there are millions of Filipinos, even 700 plus voters in Zamboanga del Sur, then it will be very much impossible to actually identify each and every one. Unless na lang siguro if they have a very, very high technology form of system in identifying these voters.
So, di yan.
I don't think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Elmer Maghanoy. Our next question will come from Radyo Bagting with Sir Vince Ambag.
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Akong pangutana, ma'am, is kining bahin atong unang nahisgutan ni Stanley sa first question, kung mahibaw-an ba sa mga watchers nato ang giboto ni ining mga butante. Ana magoy nahitabo magyud ni sa ubang mga dapit dili lang to hisgutan og asa naay uban nga pugson sila sa pag-abre walay tabunay sa kini ang ilahang balota. Naabay balaod ang COMELEC nga kinahanglang tabun gyud nagboto ka aron dili gyud makit-an sa mga tawong nasa gawas kung asang posisyon si mong kamot. Mao mo giingon nila nga kung asa dapita ang imong kamot, mao po dato ilang bantayan kung kinsa inyong giboto.
Yes, because it is within our voting procedures that even if there be watchers, then they will not be actually allowed to view the ballot screen image of a certain vote. So we have also provided in our protocol the use of our ballot secrecy folders. But then again, if the electorate really do not want to use the secrecy folder, then of course we cannot criminalize that. But we are really encouraging each and every one. So that's already within the training of our electoral board that before they actually guide the person to vote within the voting area, they are to really remind them to use the secrecy folder. And if they do not use such secrecy folder, then definitely they might get called by their DESO staff or their electoral board to really use the ballot secrecy folder. And of course, to also instruct the watcher that they be prohibited from viewing the ballot screen image of the ballots.
Pero sa mga butante, optional ra gihapon. Wala bay kanang kuan gyud.
They are really supposed to use the ballot secrecy folder. However, during that process, it's impossible to say na lahat talaga sila gamit ng folder, and it would be feasible for the electoral board to go to them because that's also prohibited. What we can only do is, number one, separation of chairs so that it be, of course, impossible for the person to really see the ballot. And of course, to make sure and always remind the people that are voting within the polling precincts to use their ballot secrecy folders.
Okay. Another question, ma'am, is sa imong nahisgutan kaganina, daghan kay mga prohibit acts ang gihatag sa COP sa mas mga pagtap-tap sa mga karatula, ilang mga flyers sa bisan asang o gibawal nga mga dapit. Pero kung atong tan-awon sa atong realidad ba, atong libuton ng Zamboanga del Sur na amang gihapon ng mga buhatag na sa kahoy, na sa mga residential area, natay madawat pod nga mga concerns nga gibutangan ang ilahang balay without permission sa tag-iyas panimalay. Unsa ba dili lang man karon nahitabo, no? Pero kana ba makakuan pa bata sa mga pamalaod sa COMELEC yun sa may pamaagi sa COMELEC nga mapatuman ni kuan kaning mga prohibited acts karon og sa mga umabot pa nga mga panahon, ma'am?
For our backlash, no, apart from complaining through the hotline, we regularly conduct our operation backlash, because if we will, of course, always just go to any vicinity and remove it without schedule, then it would rather be impossible for the COMELEC to do anything else. But for this illegally posted materials, what we know is there are two types of abatement or removal of this. We have what we call simple abatement, wherein it is being removed if it is present in an area by which it could pose as a threat, such as an electric post and the like. But for illegally posted materials that are within illegally prohibited places, we give due notice to the parties to remove this within the period of 72 hours. Because there might also be complaints of them, they will really try to get the material. So we give prior notice naman sa kanila, kasi in all fairness, they actually really pay for these resources. So there could be an instance wherein sasabihin nila sayang. So we definitely give them prior notice. But if these materials were reported, well documented by the COMELEC, and were not removed by 72 hours, then definitely we will remove that, especially if it is already very, very big. But for our Operation Backlash, we do that regularly during the days by which the COMELEC is not also doing other administrative work. So if we are going to observe our community, it's not rather perfect. But if without the Operation Backlash, then definitely we will not be able to see any wall anymore. So rest assured that the COMELEC is doing its best to not only administer the delivery of our ECMs, but is still conducting our regular backlash. And right now, there are a few candidates whom the COMELEC has already issued notices for the removal of these materials.
Mga anonymous kuan, ma'am, nga reports.
Yes.
Gina-cater ba sa COMELEC gihapon?
Yes. If you have noticed in our complaints concerned regarding kontrabigay, majority of that actually come from social media posts that are going viral. The COMELEC, because we also acknowledge the fear of the people in terms of voting, then the COMELEC is actually authorized to conduct its own investigation. But of course, the COMELEC will not only cater any complaint without any proof, because allegations are very easy to make in the absence of any evidence. If the person will be able to provide a good amount of evidence, even if it is anonymous, then the COMELEC has the authority to conduct its independent investigation over the matter.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Vince. Our next question will come from Wonder Radyo Pagadian with Sir Rodji Monera.
Good morning,
Good
attorney. Dinilang ko mangutana, attorney, bahin aning pagpaklaro sa COMELEC Resolution number 25-0179, attorney. Unsa gyud prohibit ani nga card ba nga
A membership
card?
Before, sir, if you've observed sa atong previous elections no, na atay ginatawag na membership cards, usually ginadala-dala man gyud na sa katong mga partido. It's used as an election propaganda scheme before of, pre-identifying kung kinsa ilang supporters or that. But considering that there could be it might defeat the purpose of secrecy of the votes, because then again, if you're going to provide an ID card, then that the person might be compelled to actually vote. It's not new to us Filipinos that there be a change of mind during the voting procedure, and that's something that is very welcome by the Commission. So that's why the COMELEC has already prohibited or extinguished the use of membership cards, because this might become a means of pre-identifying the expected voter turnout, and of course to avoid bandwagoning during the election day. yung system na parang mas alam ng mga tao na mananalo si ano. So doon na lang sila bumoboto. So to avoid that certain bandwagoning system and abuse also of the use of membership cards in terms of giving access to pre-identified voters, then the COMELEC has already prohibited, in the absence of any exception, the use of what we call membership cards as an election propaganda during the elections.
Follow-up question, attorney. Unsay mga sanction ani kay sagad sa among nakita karon sa bisan kami mga media nakadawat sad may ubang complaint laban ana nga gipicturan sila dayon giprint ang ilang dagway nga card. Unsay nabay unsay bugat nga sanction ani kay gibawal man dahil siya?
It's considering that it is prohibited, sir, then of course we cannot have merit on those membership cards. While it is not considered as a criminal offense, but there is no, unlike before wherein there is a special cater of these membership cards, then right now there is none. It is considered as non-bearing already. So I think that in itself is enough penalty for the use of the what you call the membership cards. So another also, if there be use of membership cards during the election period, then that will be most definitely be complained to the party issuing such membership card.
Okay. Question pa attorney about aning sample ballots na untoy giingon si Attorney Garcia nga pwede na gamiton ang sample ballots but no logo ba to, attorney?
For the sample ballots, because considering that the sample ballots might actually be used as a paraphernalia for vote buying system, vote buying for ballots, we do not actually have specific layout of sample ballot. What we know is sample ballots are actually allowed. But for sample ballots, the thing that can only incriminate a sample ballot is when it is actually with a paraphernalia of a certain of a vote buying. So if such sample ballot is not, then we cannot establish it as in exchange of a vote, then definitely we cannot criminalize that regardless of its form. However, if such sample ballot is being used as an accessory to the crime of vote buying, then most definitely that is the time by which we can incriminate the use of such sample ballot, because that is already an accessory to a vote buying incidents.
Allow ba sila muhatag sa during election day? Diha sa mga gate, sa mga precinct?
Yeah, they are actually allowed.
Allow.
Yes, they are allowed.
Okay. Last, attorney, kining 20 kilo nga bugas. Hinoon sa ato pero naamang goy na hisgutan nga 10 days prohibit sa ayuda, no? Accept lang sa kanini ang gatong memorial o kanini ang kuan. Kini bang pagbaligyag 20 kilong bugas, attorney, exempted ba po din sila hantod election day sa inyong COMELEC resolution?
So in law, not only in COMELEC actually, we cannot criminalize an act by which there is no specification on criminalizing such. But the thing is about, we cannot also say that having to sell 2 pesos per kilo of rice is considered as ayuda, because ayuda is supposed to be free. Okay, so maybe we could fall it against unfair system of encouraging a person to favor another candidate. We can impute that, but then then again that's just an allegation. If we cannot establish that such rice is being sold with bad faith, then we cannot definitely criminalize the selling of those materials. Then again, it is within the burden of the person alleging such, if it be used to sway the person to actually support a certain candidate.
Okay, thank you, attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Rodgy. No, our next question will still come from Wanda Radyo Pagadian with Sir Jason Revelo.
Check. Yes, attorney.
Yes.
Aking katanungan lang, mayroon na bang na-sanction na mga official candidates gawa ng batas sa COMELEC?
What specific batas, sir?
Yung na-sanction yung mga batas sa COMELEC kagaya ng kontrabigay. Gagaya to.
For
Mayroon na ba?
within this election, sir, considering that the campaign period is still ongoing, no? For sanction kasi in the eyes of the law, that's convicted by final judgment of guilty already. So right now, considering that there's still a short period of time, most definitely wala pa. But previously, of course, in our previous elections, there have a lot of candidates that have been sanctioned by the commission in terms of vote buying, vote selling, or even election offenses. Staffs, VOCs are not immune to these sanctions. And most definitely, COMELEC has been doing its active part to prosecute these election offenses, because if we will not prosecute it, then the people will not take such offenses seriously. But for this election, sir, we have not yet, but we have already filed a few cases. But here in COMELEC Region 9, I opt to put an emphasis that we have, insofar as we are concerned, we have not yet issued any show cause order to any candidate.
Sige, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Jason. Our next question will come from Alerto Balita TV with Miss Wiljane Arana Duhilag.
Good morning, attorney. We all know that there are still ongoing release of social services. Are they actually allowed or has a permission to release that ayuda, especially during pain period po?
For the distribution of, because the release of social services, while there is a total prohibition of such within the 10-day period, hindi naman siya prohibited prior the 10-day period. However, I would like to put an emphasis that there is a need to get first a authority from the COMELEC based on that specific certain project. Say for example, not only social service actually, but even even housing projects also. For social services, of course, I have no personal knowledge on the release. Like for example, the feeding program activity of the LGU, I cannot give a pre-identification of those which has. What I can give you a specific answer on is most definitely if they did not have any authority from the commission, then they cannot release funds for social services and housing projects, and even including the funds for public works within the 45-day period, and especially for ayuda, it's really prohibited, except burial and medical assistance during the 10-day period immediately preceding the election.
Thank you po. So my second question is in relation to kontrabigay. So as mentioned lately po, there are no reports of vote buying or walang show cause order na inilabas si COMELEC regarding to it. So do COMELEC still investigate about vote buying if there are no reports, or mag-base lang po sa mga reported cases?
The COMELEC will investigate actually in the absence of a report, because we are also mandated by law to conduct our independent surveillance of these acts that might constitute vote buying or selling. However, as for the prosecutorial process, considering that I'm also a lawyer, I would like to shed light that there is also a need to establish evidence of this. So that's why we would also like to encourage people that the COMELEC cannot actually do this alone. It should be in partner with people, especially those witnesses that will witness, of course, these incidences. So definitely the COMELEC is duty bound to conduct its investigation, but we are also hoping that we can gain aid from the people to be more prudent and intuitive of raising their concern and giving us the rightful evidence so that we can also rightfully prosecute these incidences of vote buying, selling, and abuse of state resource.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Ma'am Wiljane. Our next question will come from Brigada News FM Pagadian with Sir Aldrin Niliama.
Magandang umaga po, attorney. Yung tanong ko po is in connection sa tanong ni Sir Vince at Sir Stanley. We all know nga different parties mayroon silang watchers. How about the COMELEC? may mag-monitor ba na galing from the COMELEC para makita yung mga watchers na different parties? Kasi may nangyari kasi mga magulo ba?
For
Attorney?
our staffing during the elections, it's not only, COMELEC will definitely be at most present. However, we opt to maximize our labor force because if you're going to calculate it, no, the COMELEC actually's job is not easy. We are only visible during the elections, but our preparation requires a annual yearly effort to ensure that we can maximize our labor. We have conducted not only trainings within our staff, but we have also been engaging the presence of our staff, such as the DESO staff, in taking charge or making sure that problems in relation to technicalities will be avoided during the elections. We also have the presence of our electoral boards that will also ensure that the people are properly identified and it will stay orderly. The polling precincts will stay orderly during the elections. But to give you also guarantee, sir, of course, most definitely the COMELEC will be doing its surveillance to ensure that the security of certain vicinities also during the election day will be not prone to tampering by any other non-COMELEC individual.
Yun lang po yung tanong ko, Attorney. Thank you po.
Thank you, Sir Aldrin. Our next question will come from XFM Pagadian with Sir Kurt Estibas.
Estabas po, sir.
Estabas.
Good morning po, attorney from
Morning.
XFM Pagadian. My questions, attorney, is related to her question about ayuda.
Okay.
As well know, attorney, nga karon is daghan kayo ang naghatag og ayuda, especially AKAP. Kani bitong ngayon sa kalungsod, attorney, nga nanghatag sila gato ayuda and then sabayan nila og politiko. If ever, kung mahatag man gani sila og ayuda, attorney, wala man galing sila diha sa venue pero nailahang nawong with logo sa DSWD. And as well know nga this case is dapat sa DSWD. Pero ang mong pangutana, attorney, unsa ang sanksyon sa mga politiko and then unsa pud ang tubag sa COMELEC and then unsa pud ang buhaton sa katawhan to know this issue sa COMELEC?
So for that, I think it was well articulated by me kanina, no? Na that's actually an act constituting vote buying. If within the if there be ayuda distribution, regardless if the person is actually present, but there be a mention, even the mention of the name of the person, when the name or the picture of the person is visible in during this distribution of ayuda, then that could fall actually as an act constituting vote buying. So for COMELEC, what we need to also establish, and along with the help of the people present during that time, is of course a verified complaint, because the COMELEC can only do so much if we do not have personal knowledge on these instances. So hoping that we can have an active drive on the rightful prosecution of these cases, and the penalty of which is that it could fall as an election offense. The penalty is at least 1 year to 6 years in the absence of probation, and of course the forfeiture of the right to suffrage. So dili na siya makavie for public office, and he cannot also vote if ever a person is charged of an election offense.
So for sure, attorneys, bawal ang politics. Para sa kini mag-release kini.
Bawal gid siya.
Okay.
Even the presence or even the name or even the presence of a picture during the giving. So if ever you encounter that, hopefully you can properly file a complaint through the COMELEC so that we can properly prosecute these cases.
Okay po. Yan lang
Thank you.
naman, attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Kurt. Our next question will come from DXID Infolink Pagadian with Sir Manny Maulana.
May buntag, attorney,
May
answer.
attorney.
Actually, kini akong pangutana is, naitabo na ni during 2016 election, during Duterte and Rojas. But nadungog na po ni nga COMELEC, dunay advance kuno nga votes ni Marujas, kaso wala lang katumpag sa kadaghan sa tao ni Duterte whole over the Philippines. Then sa 2019, naitabo na sad ni kaning may tungod sa SD card. Possible ba karong mga panahon na doon na say may tabo nga mga SD card nga kunuhay madaot ang machine, the fact nga ang kandidato sa admin may mga daog?
If I be allowed to answer that in vernacular, sir, no, just to for the sake of clarity, it's actually not new to us na naagyo ingon na kani SD card dali ra gyud ni siya gubon. But in the absence then again of any case that will prosecute this allegations, then of course the COMELEC cannot acknowledge fault on that because that is not proven beyond reasonable doubt in court. What we know, what we can only provide is that in based on technicality, we have resorted to a better, more convenient machine wherein though there are still cards, of course, that are being involved, considering that that is used for data storage, by which we cannot also remove in terms of elections. For our elections, most definitely, the measure is that we use a new machine so that there will be a lesser chance of allegations as to the instance of tampering the system because it's a new one. Unlike the PCOS wherein we've used it so many times already, and the COMELEC actually has purchased the PCOS. In this instance, our machines were not purchased. We were only it was only being used under a contract of loan. So I think that gives the people a sense of peace that our machines, apart from it being in high technology, it's new. It would be less vulnerable to say for example malfunction because definitely it's new, and of course it is always being updated considering that it was not bought by COMELEC. It was rather only leased to our suppliers. So definitely apart from it being a cut cost to our commission, then rest assured that we can say that the Philippines is not behind in the use of the automated machines that are really new, really a new model to our voting system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Doon ay follow-up. Actually, ma'am, sa pagkakaroon tanaw ni mo ang weather forecast is nindot. But naalay kabalaka ang tao because aning atong system sa atong cellphone karon kung imong tanawon kusog ang signal, especially ang imong MBPS nga musangko na over 100. Pero kung tan-aw nimo ang imong paggamit mong cellphone karon na bag-o ni murag 3 to 4 days na nga magkamang gyapon inig-open nimo. Dunay kabalakang tao possible ba nga dunay something into like atong madungog sa social media nga sa gawas nung nasod kita man jud nato sa mga kandidato sa kontrapartido or kontra-admin is kusog gayo. Basis on that is bisan galis Duterte nabansagon nga pinakadaghang tao sa iyang birthday ng lapos na sa Pilipinas. Possible ba doon ay mga may tabuan sa system ninyo nga kunuhay mao na i-reason out into?
It's not about it being reasoned out. It's not also about possibility, but rather we have provided really a system by which even if it ever happens, we can still function and we cannot declare a failure of election. So like for example, for our machines, if there is a malfunction by which it will last more than 60 minutes, then we will definitely provide a backed up ACM for every municipality. As for the transmission, sir, we are not abiding by the use of solely Globe, Smart, and all other providers because we recognize that these providers are already being used daily by the Filipinos, but we have what we call the Starlink devices. In terms of Mbps rate, I do not want to, of course, invalidate the efforts of our providers, but we have really invested in our Starlink devices to ensure that we will not resort to the manual transmission of voters. But for the transmission of votes, actually it could still be done manually, but that is just a last resort. We are eyeing for 100% automated transmission and not for the manual voting. So rest assured, if all else fails, we'll never know. Maybe there could be a storm or a typhoon or whatsoever. Then there could be such challenge. But most definitely, the COMELEC has done its best to foresee these events, and we have invested in a lot of new high-tech technology to be able to ensure that that the ECMs will work during the election day, and of course, the manual transmission will only be a last resort to transmitting these votes.
Last na lang, ma'am.
Sure.
Actually, naitabo ni sa Ampatuan nga during nidagan si Gloria as og si Fernando po. Nga si Ros Fernando, ultimo ang iyang supporter wa kabutar. Possible ba kaning eleksyon na dungog man jud nga dunay jud mga supporter ni Duterte nga mo butar jud sa iyang kandidato? In the event may tabo sa usa ka area nga posible di man jud na masayro, but pabor sa mga admin then katong ilahang kandidato napasaulahi, if ever nga dunay may tabo ingon ana, doon na ba'y possibility nga mo kuan sila kanang mo protest whatsoever, unlike before nga manual pwede? Thank
For transmission, sir, if the votes are actually transmitted, we cannot say that a certain party is the votes that are being transmitted prior to such is only in favor of one party, because then again our transmission is being done simultaneously. But if there are actually questions in relation to turnout, say for example, if mudaog, dili, and all that, definitely they can file an election protest, after which, because we cannot also reflect or preempt na just because the people are visible with having to support a specific political party and the like, then it will also follow as for its lineup. So there could still be an instance wherein though there is a strong influence in a certain, say for example, a party leader, but there is no guarantee that there will be a landslide vote, because here in our country, we are rather a multi-party system, and there is no monopoly of one party to another. So if there be questions on the outcome of the elections, then they can file an election protest, which will be catered by the commission.
Last na lang, ma'am.
Sure.
Naitabo na dyan ni ma'am. Kung sa transmit, dali ra, muabot. Pero pag protest sa tao, dugay, hanto nasunog na lang ang korte. So karon, unsay possibility nga nung dugay, o pag transmit nimo dali ra kayo, dali ang result. Sa pagprotest, perting dugaya, masunog na lang ang korte, wa gyapon may tabo. Thank
So
you.
I will answer this question not as a member of the commission, but rather as a lawyer, no? Kay murag man ako'y trabaho. But actually, it's good that we are prudent and very honest to what's going on in our society. But if I were to answer that, no, without incriminating, of course, my colleagues in the profession, I think the most definite factor of that is our presence of the increase of dockets in the courts. If you are to really observe in the courts, it's not easy to dispose a case. There is a very long procedure of having to prosecute, and if we cannot strengthen or increase our system of catering these cases, then most definitely those cases that were filed at a later time will be the last that will be catered by the courts. So then again, just to give you peace, I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission at that, but I'm speaking as a lawyer. So I think that's one of the factors by which that affects the flow of disposing the presence of election-related cases in the Philippines. Yeah.
Thank you, Sir Manny. Our next question will come from Bell FM with Sir Jay Ofima.
Hello, attorney. Hello, attorney.
Hello, good morning.
Yes,
Hello.
go ahead po.
Okay, attorney, mangutana lang ko dito sa realidad. Dumigidahan kayo mga concern about COMELEC, no? But attorney, unsa bay pwedeng buhaton sa COMELEC? Kani bitong regarding sa during election day na ba? Nga doon na bitoy mga dili to malikayan nga doon na tayo gitawag manggod nga both parties aduna sila mga watchers diha sila sa mataga polling precinct. But the problem is ang mga taga watchers is mao na hinuoy makahatag og commotion or kasamok. It's because of halos na lang nila nga lion ang ilahang ang every botante nga mosulod sa polling precinct. Unsay gibuhat nga lakang sa COMELEC ana, attorney?
Number one is of course the emphasis no na isa ra gid ka watcher ang pwede mo serve. Though duha na sila per precinct but they are supposed to serve only alternately. And then if ever there could be an instance wherein then a watcher will really cause chaos, then we will most definitely call the attention of the political party installing such watcher to as a form of a measure to prohibit a person from conducting its duty as a watcher, because we cannot while we respect of course the right of a party to put up a watcher because it gives them a sense of peace that nothing is actually happening. So we cannot also invalidate the presence of watchers. What we can only guarantee is the calling out of these watchers. However, reminding you also that the COMELEC cannot do it alone. In the absence of any complaint of the misconduct of these watchers, then the COMELEC will not be informed of such. So we cannot do anything. So if then again, it will really occur on the field that a certain watcher will be the cause of the disorderliness of the election or election procedure. Then if a certain citizen will complain to the COMELEC, then most definitely we will act on it and we will call upon the attention of the political party to prohibit such watcher to in further causing chaos or misconduct during the voting hours.
Ana na ba ni? Pero mangutana lang ko, attorney, if ever allowed ba karon ang gitawag nato og open ballot? Kay usahay man ko, attorney, like sa previous election and then kaato nga last pod nga barangay elections, adunay nabantayan na mo nga mura og kini bitaw nga katingalaan kay ilahag yung gi-orient ang katong mga botante nga open ballot aron nga kini nga makita gid nila kung kisa gibutaran usa na sa mahinungdan kung ngano nga matawag na to, attorney, nga kini bitong guot na hinuon ang isig na nagliili sa bintana. It's because of ilahag yung kini nga fully ba implement ang open ballot. Unsa ilakang ana, attorney, aron nga malikayan ng ina nga cases? Thank you.
For open ballot, sir, I think I have made mention a while ago no na we really remind and call upon the attention of voters to really use the ballot secrecy folder, because if we are going to not also to just allow the system of the open ballot, then most definitely it could instill fear to the voters that they cannot vote properly based on their conscience and their personal choice as to whom they will vote during the election day. But then again, the same reminder that I opt to emphasize is that in the absence of any complaint, the COMELEC will not gain knowledge. So hopefully, if there be a committance of the open ballot system in a certain area, then the person will really complain to the COMELEC, and so the COMELEC personnel can visit this and verify as to the truthfulness of such event, and will conduct further measures so that we can of course remove the people that will be intimidating the voter upon their shading of their circles.
Thank you po. We are down to last two media outfits, attorney, before we end our program this morning. Our next question will come from Radjo Kidlat with Sir Rex Rabutin.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning po. So, pangutana lang ako, isa lang ako pangutana. So, unsay update sa mga nahitabo nga voters transfer diri sa Zamboanga del Sur kay nahimo manggod pud ni nga ining trending sa last election. Sa update ni ma'am.
For transfers.
Yes, ma'am. Transfers.
So, transfers are not actually prohibited by law. Transfers are very much encouraged if there is a change in the residence of a voter. Maybe you are trying to ask sir regarding to the allegations of the flying voters.
Yes, po.
But I opt to emphasize that if there be allegations of the presence of flying voters, then that is actually being settled after the conduct of the ERB hearing. So for the work of the COMELEC in terms of registration, I want to emphasize that our job only in registration is ministerial. So if the voter will be able to provide ample proof that he or she is a resident of an area, then of course we cannot prohibit the person from registering. What we can only do is that after the registration, we conduct an ERB hearing to verify if that certain person is really a resident of a certain area. In the absence of proper identification or proper establishment of his identity that he is actually a resident, then he may be removed by manually crossed out by the election officer. So that's the effort of the COMELEC in having to mitigate the rapid increase of transfers of residents. Because transfers alone, that's actually not a problem. What we are eyeing as a problem is the act of registering in an area by which a person is not actually a resident. So we most definitely try to resolve that through the conduct of our hearings. And of course, if a person is not resolved with the decision during the ERB hearing, then he or she can file a petition or inclusion before the proper court.
Meron pa po bang mga na-remove na? Or wala pa?
Yes. We have already finalized our EDCVL even months long before this before our election day, in part of course because we need to categorize on how many ballots that we need for the election period. So it was already long been established, the final printout of our voters list, and that is actually posted in the bulletin board of our election office. So hopefully the people can also verify if they are on the list based on the postings of the election office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you po. Our last question will come from IFM Pagadian ulit, no? May pahabol si Sir Tantan Lumayno.
Yes, again, good morning, attorney.
Good morning.
Kinahanglan ako ni ipangutan og ipaklaro kay since last election adunay diri sa first district sa Zamboanga del Sur, adunay usa ka political group nga nagamit og QR code, which is ilang giingon nga without QR code makita daw sa kana nga political group kung kinsa ang ilang gibutaran. Dindaghan mga katawhan sad ang nailad ana nga QR code. Kani ba, attorney, tinuod or dili? Kung dili magaling siya tinuod, attorney, unsay sanction nga ihatag sa COMELEC ngadto sa usa ka political group nga nagilad pinaagi sa QR code?
For the QR code, actually, I would like to totally debunk that for the security codes, any party will not have access to our ballots. So even our security marks, they are different from one ballot to another, and that the possession of these security, di ba may QR naman yung ballot. So that is actually beyond reach for any other political candidate. As for the sanctions, sir, in that case, because that's not actually a threat nor a violence. There is a rapid increase of disinformation, and that's not a disinformation. While it will be injurious to a person, we cannot prosecute it then and there. What the COMELEC can do so much is to only correct, or even if not correct, to remove such information, it be posted in the social media. So hopefully also the people will be more prudent into believing such QRs. So if then again the people have queries in relation to this, then what they can do is to really ask us, and maybe the COMELEC can certify in its own a letter. If there be actually a written inquiry on that, then the COMELEC may be able to issue its response, so that the people also be clarified that these allegations of having access to the QRs are not correct and truthful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At least naklaro. Last lang po na akong question, ma'am. Personal concern. Last sa pag-transfer, ma'am, kauban ako kung kauban, which is 2 years kapin ako diri sa Pagadian. Gusto ko mo transfer diri din. Kato kong kauban is mga 1 year pa lang. last week akong gisubay sa COMELEC akong pangalan kay wala sa tong gipagawas ninyo nga finder. Wala akong pangalan. Then wala po'y nag-text or through letter nga nadawat ako nga appeal ko sa disapproval.
So, dili ka kabutar, sir?
Gibalik ko sa mong lungsod.
Gibalik ka.
Gano ka na, ma'am?
Because most chances are, I actually have an experience in terms of registration. It's not all the time that the contact numbers are honestly well written. So it could be an instance also wherein a person will not be informed, not because of the fault of the personnel of the COMELEC, but rather on the data. Because sometimes when people register, they take this information for granted. They don't even put any number at all, by which we are also not being compelled to put a number. So if there be a petition that they be excluded in the list, then chances are they will not be informed of this.
Sa akong side, ma'am, kay gifill-inan yun ako tanan properly. Then, according sa COMELEC, ako rin gipaklaro, guys. Ang giingon nila is naday political group nga nagpetition.
Yeah.
It is true.
I cannot say, sir, on the notion, no, because I do not know your municipality, but most definitely that's the reason as to why some people actually get excluded off the list. That's why it's very important that after the registration and after the first release of the first list of voters, then the voters will be prudent in trying to check so that there still be ample time for them to raise their concern. Same with you also. Considering that you were able to raise your concern at an earlier time or earliest possibility, then that's the time that your name got back on the list. If I'm not correct, but there are also people that if they see their names on the list, it's already too late. That's why we cannot anymore cater that, because remember that the list cannot be adjusted then and there. The list is apportioned by based on the number of ballots that we actually need to give during the election day. So that's why it's important for the people to also be mindful of the deadlines that are being met by COMELEC. So if there be questions, early questions on the presence of the name on the list, then we are encouraging people to raise that at the earliest time possible.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. No, I think that's the last question, attorney. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng ating mga media partners na nagpahayag ng kanilang mga katanungan, including po ang ating mga online viewers. Before we let go of our guests this morning, let's hear first ang kanyang closing statement.
So once again, good morning. So again, I would like to thank our the Philippine Information Agency for giving us the opportunity to shed light and give our important reminders in line with our May 12, 2025. I would like to also appreciate our viewers, both online, of course, the presence of our media for actively doing its best for this election to be far more transparent and of course to increase our reach in terms of information dissemination. Would also like to acknowledge, of course, the hard work of my colleagues in the commission for doing its job in making sure that we are definitely on time during election and we are ready and we have already preempted our possible problems during the election period. So once again, in my language, daghang salamat, and hopefully we will have a continuous coordination in making sure that our outcome for these elections will not only be transparent, honest, orderly, but also credible and impartial and believable in the eyes of the general public. So once again, daghang salamat kaninyong tanan.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Glory Grace Nodado, the Administrative Legal Officer of COMELEC 9. Sa ngalan ng PCO Secretary J. Ruiz, PIA Director General Catherine Chloe De Castro, sa aming Regional Head Noemi Adaga at sa buong puwersa po ng Philippine Information Agency Region 9, ito po si Emmanuel Taghoy. Hanggang sa susunod na episode ng Kapihan sa Rehiyon 9, daghang salamat.